My name is Leslie Whitaker. I'm 29 years old. And this is the story of how I nearly died, alone, forgotten, while my mother and sister got facials and brunch. And how, when I came back, I didn't just survive. I ended the lie they called our family. It started with exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes even blinking feel like work. I had just finished a 13-hour shift at Jefferson Memorial Hospital in downtown Philadelphia. It was late October, the kind of cold that bites through 3 layers. The walk to the bus stop was icy, and the seats were damp. I leaned against the window, watching my breath fog up the glass. Home was a shoebox 1-bedroom in Germantown. Old radiator. No dishwasher. But it was clean. Quiet. Mine. I dropped my soaked shoes by the door, poured stale coffee into a chipped mug, and sat in silence. That's when the phone buzzed. It was my mother, Melinda, calling from Florida. Hey, Leslie. Quick note, Claire and I are coming back early. You'll prep dinner tomorrow night, right? Jeff is bringing his parents. I blinked. Wait. You were in Florida this morning. We land at noon tomorrow. Just make something impressive. Claire wants risotto. And could you please make it look elegant? You always do a nice job with that. She hung up. No, how are you? No, are you free? Just, orders. You see, in my family, I was the default servant. Not by title, but by function. If something needed to be done, holiday dinners, family chores, doctor appointments, it was assumed I'd do it. My mother didn't ask. Claire didn't thank me. I was useful, and that was enough for them. Claire was the princess. Younger by 4 years, thinner by 20 pounds, and endlessly adored by my mother. She'd just finished an interior design course and acted like she'd conquered the world. Meanwhile, I worked nights in the trauma wing, mopping up the worst parts of human suffering with a smile. To them, that wasn't glamorous. That was Leslie's little nursing job. The next day, I dragged myself to the store, picked out wine that wouldn't drain my budget, and rushed to their house, the one I grew up in but never truly belonged to. I cooked until my hands were raw, rearranged the furniture, and scrubbed fingerprints from the glass. They arrived like celebrities. Claire tossed her coat at me as she walked in. You didn't make risotto? You didn't say you needed it. She turned to Mom. See? She never listens. Melinda rolled her eyes. Leslie, it's not that hard. Claire's trying to make an impression. Dinner was a blur of forced smiles and sarcastic comments. Jeff's parents liked the wine. No one complimented the food. I cleared the dishes quietly while they laughed about vacation plans. A glass slipped in the sink, slicing my finger. Blood bloomed across my palm. No one noticed. I just wrapped a paper towel around it and kept working. Later that night, I went up to my old room, still unchanged, still cold, and sat in the dark. The window glowed with moonlight. I hadn't cried. Not yet. I just felt hollow, like the air had been knocked out of me one disappointment at a time. The next morning, rain fell in thick, endless sheets. I got a call from a colleague, someone's kid was sick. Could I cover the overnight shift? I said yes without thinking. Hospitals made more sense to me than my own family ever did. That shift should have been like any other. But it wasn't. At 7:13 a.m., I crossed Broad Street, heading toward my bus stop. That's when the truck hit me. There was no warning. Just headlights and cold steel. Screams. Then darkness. When I arrived back at Jefferson, the same hospital I'd just worked in, no one recognized me at first. I was unrecognizable. Bloodied. Broken. Barely breathing. They rushed me into surgery with shattered ribs, a ruptured liver, brain swelling, and a broken leg. I was in a coma before they even had time to call my emergency contact. Melinda Miller. My mother. They called her 3 times. She answered on the 3rd try, annoyed. She's in a coma, the doctor said. Melinda sighed. Can't someone else come? I'm taking Claire to her spa appointment. Tell her to call when she wakes up. That was her response to her daughter dying. The nurses were stunned. One of them, Jennifer, an old friend from nursing school, refused to accept it. She stayed. Held my hand. Wiped my forehead. Grace, she whispered, you don't get to leave us like this. My mother never showed. My sister never called. I was in that hospital for 7 days before anyone with my blood walked through the door. And by then, everything had already changed. Because I had started to wake up. And I remembered everything. I didn't open my eyes on the first day, or even the second. But I heard them. The machines, the shuffling of nurses' shoes, Jennifer's soft, steady voice. She was always there. Reading me articles from medical journals, cracking jokes like I'd be annoyed if I could talk. And she was right. I would have been. On the 4th night, she whispered, Leslie, squeeze my hand if you can hear me. I tried. I really did. But only my eyelids twitched. Jennifer's voice cracked. It's okay. I'll keep talking. I'm not going anywhere. And she didn't. Not for 1 second. Meanwhile, Melinda and Claire were busy. Shopping. Brunching. Booking last-minute facials. The hospital staff called them 6 times. Each time, the answer was colder than the last. She's a nurse, Claire reportedly said once. She'll know how to take care of herself. What's the panic? But I couldn't even breathe on my own. I was hooked to machines, my body held together by rods, wires, and stitches. And the 2 women who should have moved heaven and earth to be there? They were picking out outfits for dinner dates. Jennifer finally said something to one of the doctors. If she didn't have coworkers, she would have died alone. On day 5, I blinked. On day 6, I moved my fingers. And on the morning of day 7, I opened my eyes fully, and the first thing I mouthed, dry and cracked, was, Dad? They all looked at one another. That's when I learned he hadn't called. Hadn't visited. Hadn't even been informed. My emergency file only listed Melinda and Claire. Jennifer frowned, pulling up her phone. He's in Vancouver, right? No, I whispered. Chicago. Confusion darkened her face. We were told. And that's when I knew. They hadn't just abandoned me. They'd hidden me. From him. I asked Jennifer to help me find my father. She didn't hesitate. She contacted his firm, tracked down the executive assistant. Lorraine. The second she heard my name, Lorraine gasped. Wait, Grace Miller? She's his daughter. I thought he knew. Jennifer's voice turned sharp. He doesn't. You need to tell him. Now. 2 hours later, the ICU phone rang. Jennifer picked up, then handed it to me. It's your dad. I couldn't hold the phone steady. But when I heard his voice, the frantic, hoarse, broken, I sobbed so hard I thought I'd pass out again. I'm in Chicago, Leslie. I had no idea. Your mom told me you just had the flu. If I'd known, his voice cracked. I'm coming home. But it was too late for apologies. Because by then, the damage wasn't just physical. It was soul deep. I left the hospital 5 days later, early, against doctor recommendations. Jennifer offered to let me recover at her place, and I agreed. There was no way in hell I was returning to my mother's house. But part of me needed closure. Answers. Something. So 3 nights later, I asked Jennifer to take me back. Quietly. Just for a few minutes. She parked 2 blocks away. I slipped in through the back door with my old key. They hadn't changed the locks. Why would they? To them, I was still the obedient little nurse who'd cook and clean without question. But this time, I wasn't there to help. I stood in the hallway, the lights low, the smell of cheap candles filling the air. That's when I heard voices in the living room. Familiar. Chilling. Melinda's. And a man's. I told Robert she had the flu, my mother said, laughing. That girl is too obedient to question it. Careful, the man replied. Robert still thinks Claire is his daughter. You know she's not, Melinda snapped. We agreed to keep that buried. If he finds out, we lose everything. My heart stopped. Claire wasn't my father's daughter? The man's voice, Joseph. An old co-worker of Dad's. I remembered him vaguely. Always hanging around too long at barbecues. I've kept this lie for 20 years, Melinda continued. Claire doesn't even know. I hit record on my phone. My hands were shaking, but I kept the lens pointed at the doorway. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Couldn't unhear what I'd just heard. I left without making a sound. But I was never going to stay silent again. Over the next 48 hours, I put everything together. With Jennifer's help, I pulled old emails. Melinda had a hidden account, full of messages to Joseph. Love letters. Plans. Fear. Robert still thinks Claire is his, one message read. If he ever learns the truth, we're done. Jennifer also helped me collect DNA samples. A hair strand from Claire's old brush. A cotton pad from Dad's last visit. 3 days later, the results came in. Probability of paternity, 0%. Claire was not Robert Whittaker's daughter. And I was done pretending. I didn't cry when I read the DNA results. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I just sat there in Jennifer's dimly lit kitchen, staring at that single, brutal sentence, probability of paternity, 0%. The truth wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation. Like finding the receipt for something you always knew was stolen. For years, I'd felt it, the way Mom treated Claire like a delicate gem and me like a housemaid. The way she'd smile at Claire's messy, reckless plans and roll her eyes at my degrees, my shifts, my efforts. And now I knew why. Claire wasn't just her favorite. She was her secret. A secret she built her whole life around. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out a sheet of paper and wrote a letter, not just any letter, but the kind that could change a life. Or destroy one. To Robert Whittaker. From Leslie, your daughter. I included the letter. Printed the email chains. Added a USB with the recorded conversation between Mom and Joseph. And last, I placed the DNA results, bold, undeniable. I sealed it in an envelope and wrote one sentence on the back in my handwriting. I nearly died. And you were never supposed to know. Jennifer watched me slip it into the courier bag. Are you ready? I nodded. Mail it overnight. Signature required. She hesitated. Leslie, once this is out there, there's no going back. I met her eyes. I'm not going back. Not to that house. Not to that lie. The courier picked it up at 10 a.m. By noon the next day, Robert Whittaker was holding it in his hands. He read the letter in his Chicago office. Read every line 3 times. Then he opened the emails. Plugged in the USB. Played the recording. And when he reached the DNA results, his hands reportedly started to shake so badly that his assistant had to bring him water. He didn't speak for hours. Then he booked a flight home. The next day, at 6:42 p.m., my father walked up the steps of the white colonial house we used to call home. He didn't knock. He used his old key. Melinda was in the living room, swirling juice in a crystal glass. Claire was on the floor, scrolling through Instagram. When Robert walked in, the silence cracked like a gunshot. "Robert?" Mom blinked. "You weren't supposed to be back until..." He cut her off. "I read Leslie's letter." Claire looked up. Confused. "What letter?" Dad reached into his coat and pulled out the envelope. Placed it on the table. Calm. Cold. Like a man who'd buried all his grief into that single moment. "I listened to your conversation with Joseph," he said. "I saw the emails. And the DNA results." Melinda's glass hit the table with a loud clink. Claire's face turned white. "DNA results?" Robert turned to her, voice breaking. "You're not my daughter." She stumbled back, like he'd slapped her. What are you saying?" He didn't soften. Didn't apologize. "You're not my daughter. And I'm not your father." Melinda rushed forward. "Robert, please, let me explain." "No," he said. "You had 20 years to explain. And instead, you hid my daughter's accident from me. She was in a coma. You told me she had the flu. You let me sit in Chicago while she almost died." Claire was sobbing now. "You're not serious." "I'm still your family." "You're not," he said. Then his voice broke for the first time. "Leslie is." He pulled a second envelope from his briefcase and dropped it onto the table. "This is the divorce petition. I've already signed it. You'll be served formally tomorrow." Melinda's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like a woman whose lies had finally cornered her. Claire whispered, "What about me?" Robert looked at her. Long quiet. Pained. "I don't hate you," he said softly. "But I don't owe you anything anymore." And with that, he walked out. The door closed behind him with finality. Like the end of a chapter 28 years too long. That same night, Dad came to Jennifer's place. He knocked gently, holding nothing but a suitcase and a small bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, even though I hadn't told him that in years. I opened the door slowly, still in a robe, my leg brace stiff against the frame. I hadn't seen him cry since Grandma's funeral. But he cried then. "I'm so sorry, Leslie," he whispered. "I should have known. I should have been there. I believed her over you. And I'll never forgive myself for that." I didn't speak. I just stepped forward, into his arms, and held on. I didn't forgive him that night. Not fully. But I started to. Because at least he came. At least one of them did. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Not all at once, but like a series of quiet collapses. Robert, my father, moved out of the old house permanently. He rented a small 2-bedroom apartment just north of Boston, not far from where I'd be doing rehab at the recovery wing of Beth Israel. He offered to let me move in while I healed. No pressure. No guilt. Just space, and quiet, and safety. I accepted. The apartment wasn't grand. It had outdated floors, beige walls, and a leaky faucet in the kitchen. But it was peaceful. The kind of peace I didn't even know I'd been missing. We painted the living room ourselves, pale cream with soft blue trim. I brought my books. He hung up old photos Mom had shoved in drawers years ago. I placed my nursing degree on the wall for the first time since graduation. For once, I didn't feel like I was hiding behind someone else's spotlight. Dad turned down a promotion in Chicago. Said he was staying in Boston, taking a consulting role. Jobs come and go, he told me one night while we ate soup in silence. But you? You're my one constant. Jennifer still visited every Sunday. She brought muffins, joked with Dad, and filled the space with warmth. The first time she came over, she saw the flowers in the kitchen and raised a brow. Sunflowers, she smirked at him. Trying to earn points? Dad laughed, scratching his beard. Is it working? It was. Meanwhile, back in Philadelphia, the implosion continued. Melinda received formal divorce papers. She tried to stall, begged for mediation, even claimed she needed time to prepare Claire emotionally. But Dad didn't budge. He'd been manipulated for nearly 3 decades. He wasn't giving her another day. 2 weeks later, a temporary court order forced Melinda and Claire to vacate the Whitaker house. Dad had been the sole legal owner since 2009, a detail Mom had apparently forgotten while planning her future with Joseph. They packed their things in silence, watched by curious neighbors who used to praise our perfect family. And then, with no fanfare, they left. The movers said they fought the whole time. Claire screamed at Melinda. Melinda threw a wine glass. None of it surprised me. I didn't hear any of this from them, of course. I heard it from a patient's daughter, a woman who happened to work at the boutique downtown where Melinda had applied for a job as a style consultant. After nearly 30 years of being a housewife, it was her only option. She wore high heels to the interview and nearly fell twice. She got the job, barely, and now she worked folding scarves and recommending handbags to the type of women she used to brunch with. Karma doesn't come loudly. It arrives in silence. In the humiliation of retail hours and commission slips. As for Claire, she tried to reach Joseph, the man who, biologically, was her father. She brought the DNA results. Left him a note at his office. Even waited in the parking lot one afternoon, just hoping for 5 minutes. When he finally emerged, she ran to him. "Please," she said. "I just want to talk." Joseph looked at her like she was a ghost. A problem resurfaced. "You're not my daughter," he said flatly. "You're the result of a mistake. Don't contact me again." Then he got in his car and drove off. Claire was never the same after that. The girl who once walked with her chin in the air now avoided mirrors. The world had always given her everything. She had no idea how to survive without it. I didn't gloat. I didn't send a message. I didn't need to. Because the truth was doing its job, slowly, relentlessly. Meanwhile, I was learning how to live. Rehab was brutal. My left leg took longer to heal than expected. The physical therapist didn't sugarcoat anything. He made me cry twice in the first week. But every time I looked over my shoulder, Dad was there. Sitting on the hard plastic chair. Holding water. Cheering under his breath when I took another step. "You were always strong," he said one day, watching me walk across the room with a cane. I just didn't see it before. I didn't reply. But I smiled. A real one. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. It was late November when I found the courage to open the last drawer in my old bedside table, the one where I used to keep all the letters my mom never read, the birthday cards Claire never signed, the list of colleges I applied to without help. I burned them all in the fireplace. Jennifer came by that night. She brought wine. Dad cooked pasta. The 3 of us sat in the small living room, the window fogged from the warmth inside. Jennifer raised her glass. To truth. Dad clinked his. To family. I lifted mine last. To surviving. And finally being seen. Thanksgiving came. The first one without Mom's overly complicated place settings, or Claire's Instagrammable centerpieces. Just me, Dad, Jennifer, and a roast chicken that was slightly overcooked but made with more care than any holiday dinner I could remember. There was no drama. No tension. Just warmth, laughter, and the kind of quiet that felt earned. Jennifer told a story about a patient who demanded morphine because his chakras were misaligned. Dad shared an old business travel story involving a sushi mix-up in Tokyo and a very angry CEO. I hadn't laughed like that in years. Not politely. Not out of obligation. Really laughed. After dinner, Dad handed me a small box. No bow. Just a card with my name in his handwriting. Inside was a charm bracelet. One tiny charm, a heart with the engraving, "You were never hard to love." I just never said it enough. Tears slipped down my cheek before I could stop them. He didn't hug me, didn't say anything else. Just squeezed my shoulder and stood up to do the dishes. That night, I sat by the window, watching snow begin to dust the rooftops. My life, this new life, wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. No subject line. Just. Dad's estate lawyer reached out. "Are you going?" "Claire." I blinked. "What?" I reread it. Twice. I hadn't spoken to Claire since Dad confronted her and Melinda. Why would she be contacting me now? And what estate lawyer? I called Jennifer. "I just got a text," I said. Claire mentioned Dad's estate. But Dad's alive. And he didn't say anything about. She interrupted me gently. "Leslie." He probably meant his dad. I froze. Grandpa Whitaker. Of course. He'd been living in a senior facility outside Pittsburgh for years. I hadn't seen him since Mom quietly stopped inviting me to family events, claiming it would just be easier this way. I assumed he didn't care much. I never asked. But maybe I'd been wrong. I called Dad. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, sweetheart. Did Grandpa?" A pause. Then a sigh. "He passed last week." Peacefully. In his sleep. My chest tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was going to. I just didn't want to drop it on you during Thanksgiving." "He left something for you." "That's why the lawyer called. We're meeting at the old house on Saturday." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Claire texted me." Dad's voice shifted. "She did?" "Yeah. I guess she assumed she'd be the one getting everything." A beat of silence. "I guess she did," he said softly. Saturday arrived cold and gray. The lawyer, a man named Elgin Withers, stood in the parlor of the Whitaker estate like a character from an old play. His suit was perfectly pressed. His tone precise. Melinda and Claire sat stiffly on the couch. Claire looked tired. Her makeup was too heavy. Melinda, for the first time in memory, wore something off the rack. Dad stood beside me near the window. He didn't speak. Neither did I. "Robert Whitaker Sr., the lawyer began, left behind a video will. He recorded it just before his 87th birthday. We'll watch it in full now." He pressed play. The screen lit up. There was Grandpa, older, smaller, but sharp-eyed. He wore a red cardigan and sat by a window with snow behind him. "If you're seeing this, I've passed," he said, smiling faintly. "Let me get right to it. I know what this family has become. And I know who's really been there for my son, and who hasn't." Melinda shifted uncomfortably. Claire crossed her arms. "I raised Robert to be a good man. A provider. But even good men get lied to. I've seen it for years." He looked straight at the camera. "To Melinda, you were never honest. And I know it. To Claire, you grew up thinking the world revolved around you. But you were given a lie and wrapped it around your entire identity. I pity you." Claire's face turned red. "To Leslie, I'm sorry I didn't reach out. I was told things. But I watched from afar. I saw what you became. And I want you to know, I always knew you were mine. Even if the others forgot." He cleared his throat, eyes misting. "That's why I'm leaving the estate to you. The house, the stocks, the cash. Everything. Not because of blood. But because of who you are." The video ended. Silence. Claire leapt to her feet. What the hell is this? Melinda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Elgin calmly handed me a thick folder. Leslie Whittaker. You are now the sole beneficiary of Robert Whittaker's estate, as outlined in the will. I took it with steady hands. Claire stormed out. Melinda followed her, shouting her name. Dad put a hand on my back. You okay? I nodded. I didn't expect this, I whispered. But you earned it, he replied. Even if they never wanted to see it. The day after the will was read, I drove past the old Whittaker estate by myself. The trees in the front yard were bare. A private property, "No trespassing" sign had been staked into the ground by the lawyer's office just the week before. It looked foreign now, like a stage after the final curtain falls, empty, echoing with the ghosts of a script that never belonged to me. But it was mine. Every inch of it. I still hadn't touched a dollar. Still hadn't walked through the upstairs rooms. The inheritance paperwork sat unopened on my kitchen counter like it was too heavy to lift. For years, I had trained myself not to expect anything. Not love. Not fairness. Not even a thank you. And suddenly, here I was, the sole heir to the Whittaker fortune. Jennifer came over later that evening. She found me staring at the documents in silence. She poured tea. Sat across from me. Then asked the question I'd been avoiding all day. So what are you going to do with it? I looked at her. And for once, I didn't say I don't know. I'm going to donate half. She blinked. Half? I nodded. To the Trauma Recovery Center. The one in North Philly. The one that never has enough beds. Jennifer didn't say anything at first. Then, quietly, you really are your father's daughter. That made me smile, a real, deep one. Not because I needed to prove anything anymore, but because I finally didn't. The next day, the calls began. First it was Claire. Blocked number. No voicemail. Then an email, written in all lowercase, no greeting. You didn't even say anything. We're sisters. You could have told me. I didn't reply. Then Melinda tried. Voicemails at midnight, texts with phrases like I didn't mean for it to go this far and we were still a family. I stared at them like they were in another language. She finally sent one last message. The house isn't just bricks. It's memories. Claire doesn't have anywhere to go. I lost everything. Don't do this to me. I read it twice. Then calmly deleted it. Because the truth was, she hadn't lost everything. She had thrown everything away, one lie at a time. And now, she was simply holding the wreckage she'd built with her own hands. Dad watched me press the delete button. He didn't say a word. Just leaned over and opened the box of old Whittaker family photos he'd saved for decades. Want to help me sort them? He asked. So we did. One by one. Tossing out the ones where the smiles felt fake. Keeping the ones that held truth, him holding me on his shoulders at the park, my 6th grade science fair photo, the candid shot of me studying under a tree while he read nearby with a coffee in hand. That's when I saw it, the last postcard I'd ever received from him. Sent during one of his Vancouver trips. The front read, I miss you more than Tokyo's ramen. On the back, just one line, I hope you're safe. You matter, even when no one says it. I pressed the card to my chest and closed my eyes. For years, that line had kept me going. And now, it had come full circle. A week before Christmas, I returned to the estate one last time, not for nostalgia, but for something final. I walked into the empty living room. The furniture had been cleared. The walls echoed. I stood in the center of it all and pulled a letter from my coat pocket. The envelope had one name on it, Claire. I left it on the mantel. It read, Claire. You once called me the boring sister. The responsible one. The one who chose nursing over ambition. But while you were busy curating a life on social media, I was saving real ones. While you lied, I listened. While you ran, I stayed. I don't owe you an explanation, but here's one anyway. I didn't tell you about the inheritance because you wouldn't have believed it. Not until you saw the lawyer's face. Just like you never believed I was the daughter worth fighting for. I hope one day you understand what family really means. It's not about the house or the money. It's about showing up. And you never did. Goodbye. Leslie. Then I left the key beside it. Locked the door. And walked away. It's been 6 months since I left that key on the mantel. Since I walked away from the house that was never really a home. From the mother who used me until I broke. From the sister who mistook privilege for identity. I didn't go back. Not even once. The estate sold in February. I used part of the funds to establish the Whitaker Fund for Trauma Nurses, a small but growing initiative that helps overworked medical professionals access mental health services, housing support, and continuing education. It launched quietly, no press, no ribbon-cutting ceremony. But within 3 weeks, I got over 40 applications. And that's when I knew, this wasn't just about revenge. This was about rewriting the story. For people like me. Jennifer stayed in my life like the steadfast lighthouse she had always been. She eventually became the co-director of the fund. On Sundays, we still meet for waffles and music in the little park near my apartment. She brought me a cake on my 30th birthday and wrote in the card, "To the strongest woman I know, and the best friend I'll never deserve but always admire." Dad? He's still in Boston. Still working part-time, but only so he doesn't go crazy with free time. We cook together now. He learned how to make homemade dumplings just because I mentioned once that I missed them. Sometimes, we talk about Mom and Claire. Mostly in fragments. He still carries guilt for the silence, for the blindness, for letting others define our family for so long. But I told him the truth one night over dinner. You didn't fail me, Dad. You found me. That's more than most people ever get. He cried. I didn't. Because I'd already shed every tear I ever had for the people who left me in a hospital bed and chose spa treatments over my life. Claire tried to call once more. This time from a new number. I didn't answer. But she left a message. I didn't know about any of it. I thought you were just cold. That you didn't care. But I was wrong. About everything. If you ever want to talk. I'm here. I listened to it once. Then deleted it. Not out of hatred. But because I didn't need anything from her anymore. Not her guilt. Not her validation. Not her version of love, always laced with conditions. This past week, I finally framed one photo for my bedroom wall, just one. It's from the first snowfall after my discharge. Dad's in his dark blue sweater. Jennifer's wearing her ridiculous fox ear beanie. I'm between them, wrapped in a blanket, holding a mug of cocoa and smiling. Really smiling. I hung the frame above my bed. Not as a trophy. But as a promise. To myself. To never go back to a life where love meant obligation and silence was mistaken for strength. I no longer wake up dreading texts from my mother. I don't flinch at the sound of my phone. I don't over-explain, over-apologize, or beg to be seen. Because I finally understand that surviving isn't the same as living. And being useful isn't the same as being loved. What you just heard isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a story of awakening. Of finding yourself beneath the rubble of everyone else's expectations. Leslie didn't just reclaim an inheritance. She reclaimed her name. Her dignity. Her future. And in doing so, she reminded us all that blood is not a promise as truth is. If you've ever been the quiet one, the invisible one, the one they thought would never speak up. Remember this. Sometimes, the ones they forget become the ones they'll never forget. Let us know in the comments, what would you have done in Leslie's place? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge.